at the beginning of class. So you've got the bottom of your hand, the sort of base of your palm resting on the bone. I suppose it's your cheekbone, isn't it? Just below your eyes, and your fingers on your forehead. And then let your eyes rest back into the sockets. Just let your face soften and relax. And allow a couple of breaths to move through you. Just being there, being quiet. If you like, you can always let your head roll a little bit to the right and to the left with your palms over your eyes. Lovely. And whenever you've, maybe have another breath or two with your palms over your eyes. And then from here, you're going to let your arms come to rest on the floor beside you. Let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And if your legs are long, you're going to bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And take a moment to feel the contact of your footprints on the floor. And it's fine to still have socks on, Jan, you don't have to take them off. The contact of your footprints on the floor, the contact of the back of your pelvis on the floor. And then start to let your knees tilt a little bit to the right and to the left. And we've got a little focus in part of this class. We're going to be doing a sequence which I came up with. My lower back was feeling very tight at some point during the last couple of weeks. So all I'd like you to do at this point is just notice how your lower back's feeling. So as your knees are tilting to the right and to the left, obviously notice what presents itself to you in your body in terms of sensations around the pelvis, into the hip joints and the lower back. But I think, yes, just particularly checking in with how your lower back feels. So a couple more times, let the knees tilt to the right and to the left. Good. And once, twice more, feel how the weight is shifting side to side across the back of your pelvis. Because then what I'd like you to do is settle in the center. And come to those movements where we're tipping our pelvis on the floor. So you're tipping your pelvis towards your face a little bit and then away from your face. So you're shifting the contact of your pelvis on the floor. So in one direction is you tilt your pelvis towards your face, the very bottom of your pelvis comes off the floor and the top, your lower back flattens out and you're feeling the weight in the top of your pelvis on the ground. And then when you tip your pelvis away from your head, your lower back arches from the floor a little bit. And again, just seeing how these movements feel in your lower back. And from these movements of tipping your pelvis towards your head, tilting your pelvis away from your head, can you then come on into 2 or 3 bridge poses? So it's usually that movement when we tip our pelvis towards our head and then the bottom of the pelvis comes off the floor. And then we feel that we can quite easily move a little bit further into, quite an easy bridge pose. So we let the whole of the pelvis come off the floor and some of the vertebrae as well coming up off the ground. And 2 or 3 times, just in a very sort of easy, an easy, non-pushy way, rolling up and down into bridge pose. And seeing what it feels like when your pelvis is off the floor, when you're sinking down into your footprints. And how does it feel as you're picking some of your vertebrae off the floor? And particularly, how does it feel when you're placing your spine back onto the floor? And again, particularly around the lower back. Very nice. And just letting your breath flow in and out as it wants to. So there's no particular way that you need to breathe here, but just make sure that you're not holding your breath. When you've done this 2 or 3 times, hi May, hi, we're starting lying down. So if you join us now, there'll still be a little bit of lying down to go. So when you've done this 2 or 3 times, then fold your knees into your chest. That's nice. So May, you can join us with your knees folded into your chest and just doing a little bit of rocking around. Yeah, so you can hold around your knees, you can do a little bit of rocking around. And you can also do a little bit of taking your legs up to the ceiling and giving them a shake out. So whichever you prefer. Good. Very nice. And then what we're going to do is bring our feet back on the floor. We're going to do one more, I suppose, sort of movement thing on our backs. So if you bring your feet back to the floor, and you're going to sink into your feet enough that you can lift your pelvis off the ground, not very high, maybe just an inch or so. And then what I'd like you to do is try to move your pelvis from side to side. So let your pelvis move to the right and then the left. And you could then let your pelvis come down even lower. So your pelvis is, the back of your pelvis is brushing the floor. And you're trying to move your pelvis side to side. It's not always an easy movement. So we're not tilting the pelvis, we're just trying to keep the pelvis level and move it a little bit to the left, move it a little bit to the right. You're sort of brushing the back of your pelvis side to side on the floor. And don't worry if this movement feels confusing. Some of you would be familiar too. We're going to be doing quite a lot of this sort of moving. It's related to our tail wagging, which we will come on to in a moment. So when from there, you're going to fold your knees back into your chest again. And again, you can have a little bit of a rock holding around your knees. And again, you can take your legs up to the ceiling and give them a little bit of a shake out. But then what I'd like you to do is just settle quietly on your back with your knees folded in towards you. And what I'm going to suggest now is, yes, have your knees folded into your chest, but just slide your hands. So rather than holding around the top of your knees, slide your hands in the fold at the back of your knees. So it might be that you can rest your elbows on the ground and have your hands in the fold of the back of your knees. And I'd just like you to lie there quietly for a few breaths on your back. That's it. Good. And let the breath come in, let the breath. And I'd like you to also to imagine here that this is very much the same as child pose. Yeah. So in a moment, we're going to be coming over into child pose, but I'd like you to imagine that at this point, you're child pose on your back. And from lying on your, and as you're lying on your back, just breathing here, just settling, imagine how you're going to come over into child pose. And then in a moment, you're going to do it. And you're going to sort of come over into child pose as sort of easy, as smoothly as possible. So imagine the movement into child pose and then come over into child pose. And I suppose as well as this focus on releasing tension in the lower back today, this is one of my other focuses. It's just the sense of how can we move from one position to another as easily and comfortably as possibly. So come into child pose and just see how it feels to be in child pose after imagining yourself in child pose. And just a couple of quiet breaths in child pose, letting yourself, your mind, your body, your breathing settle into child. And then from child pose, we're going to come onto hands and knees, and we're going to do some cat movements, and then we're going to come into dog pose. So really just a little bit of getting ourselves moving. So come onto hands and knees, settle down, with your hands under your shoulders, your knees under your hips. And just come to rounding your back to the ceiling, dipping your spine down to the floor. Seeing how these movements feel today. Okay, so rounding and dipping your spine in cat. And cat's a really good place, as we all know, to get a sense of how our lower back is feeling, how we're feeling around the middle of ourselves. So as you round your back to the ceiling, you can notice, how does your lower back feel? Does it feel mobile? Does it feel a bit tight? When you dip your spine down to the floor equally, how does it feel? And sometimes our back can just feel a little bit more vulnerable than other times. So again, you could notice that. And then whenever you're ready, whenever you feel that you want to move a little bit more, you're going to do a couple of dog poses. So if you've still got your socks on, you might need to want to take those off. Although those of you who are doing garden yoga, we realised you can quite easily do a lot of things in socks. So coming into your dog pose, and yeah, just seeing how that first dog pose feels. And I say 2 dog poses, but it really depends. So if you come into dog pose and it feels quite good, you might stay there longer than you imagine you would. But if you come into dog pose and it feels quite tight, you might want to come back down, have a quick little breather, do another dog pose. So yes, good to see the cardigans coming off, Sarah. So it isn't too cold in Bristol. Good. So yes, whenever you're ready, and again, when you come into dog pose, like when any of the positions or the movements we do, you give yourself time to settle in dog, to find for your breath to settle, and to feel what you can feel in dog. So what presents itself to you when you're in dog pose in terms of your body? Maybe it's the shoulders, maybe it's the back of the legs, maybe if the neck feels tight, you can let your head go a bit. Very nice. Lovely. Good. Yes, and when you've done a couple of dog poses, you're once again going to settle down into child pose for a couple of quiet breaths. Or if you prefer to be in kneeling, that's absolutely fine. Just settling yourself, giving your hands and your wrists a little rest. Good. So we're going to work now with this it's quite a simple sequence, but I was finding this really helpful when I had, as I was saying this the other day, when I had this really stiff back. So first of all, and we're going to repeat this sequence 3 times. So coming onto hands and knees, the first thing we're going to do tail wagging basically on hands and knees. So we're going to be on hands and knees. We're going to imagine that we have a tail, and we're going to wag our tail from side to side. Now, there are variations you can do. So I suppose when I was doing this sequence, I was just really doing this side to side movement of my pelvis, imagining I've got a tail. But you could also swing your legs from side to side. So that very much creates the same movement in your pelvis. So we feel that one side of our body is shortening, one side's lengthening out. Okay. And if you've swung your legs from side to side, you could come back and just again imagine you have a tail and swish or wag your tail from side to side. And then from here, we're going to go into child pose, and we're going to try and wiggle our pelvis in a similar way in child pose. So it's child pose, and just, can you find a sort of side to side movement of your pelvis in child pose? It's not going to be so side bendy. So this is a bit more, should I say, experimental. But yes, just can you find a bit of a side to side wiggly movement of your pelvis in child? Mel, I know that you're an expert in this one. So look at you. But yeah. So is it possible to wiggle your pelvis a bit in child pose? Good. Very nice. And then from child pose, we're going to slither forwards onto our bellies, and we're going to wiggle our pelvis from side to side on our belly, which is, I think, sometimes an easier place to do it, and it really helps us to settle. So when you come onto your belly, you could rest one hand on top of the other and rest a cheek on your hands. Lie on your belly and this side to side wiggling of your pelvis. Good. So that's it. Lie down onto your belly, and that's it, Sarah, and wiggle your pelvis from side to side. So we're here, we're just trying to wiggle, yeah. Wiggle our pelvis, rock our pelvis from side to side. And then lying on your belly, I want you to think about, because what we're going to do next is come into dog pose. And I want you to think about what's the easiest way, what's the most comfortable way to come off your belly? I always think it's not always so easy. So it might be that from your belly, you want to fold back into child pose and then go into dog. Or it might be you're happy to sort of sink into your hands, come up onto your knees and then up into dog pose. And when you come into dog pose, it's just a normal dog. You're not trying to wiggle. Well, I say you're not trying to wiggle your pelvis from side to side. If in dog pose, you're bending one knee at a time, you could exaggerate that movement so it does sort of shorten you in one side and lengthen you out in the other. Good. Sarah, are you okay? You're looking at the laptop in a puzzled way, so I can't hear you. You can always, you can press the space bar if you want to unmute yourself. And from dog pose, everyone. You can. From dog pose, everyone, you're going to fold into child pose. And just a couple of breaths in child pose where you take the weight off your hands. I think I've unmuted you, Sarah. Are you okay there? Did you?
Yeah, I just can't see you. I've pressed something and I don't know how to. I've got me, but not you.
You're on the wrong view. I think you go to speaker view.
Yeah.
So it should be in your top left,
yeah,
top right-hand corner. Are you on speaker view? But you still can only see yourself.
Yeah.
Go on gallery view for a moment. What happens if you go on gallery view? Can you see everyone?
I can see everyone.
Oh, hang on. Hold on. I'm spotlight. Right. Right.
Sorry, everybody.
I'm just, hold on.
That's better.
No, don't worry. I think there was, is that better? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes. Thank you.
There was some problem. I was pinned, not spotlit. Okay. All right. Brilliant. So we're going to now repeat that whole little sequence. So come back onto hands and knees. Come back to your tail wagging. Okay, so this is a very simple sequence, but I found it so helpful when my lower back was not happy. So it's this hands and knees, bit of tail wagging. Again, you could be swinging your legs from side to side. And then we come into child pose and we try and do a similar side to side movement with our pelvis. So again, it's a bit of a, can we sort of wiggle our pelvis a little bit from side to side in child pose? And keep noticing in your body which position is most helpful for you in terms of sort of releasing you around the pelvis. And so from child pose, we then slither onto our belly and we wiggle our pelvis on our bellies. And I think I saw May, it might have been, which is quite a nice one. The one where you can always do this if you want, where you take the soles of your feet towards the ceiling and you tilt your feet from side to side. And again, this does give you that sort of, I suppose, it's almost a bit more twisty now, but just, again, it's finding that movement around the middle of yourself. And then once more, from lying on your belly, you're going to think about how can I come into dog pose as easily as possible without it making it feel like you're coming into a sit-up. sorry, not a sit up, a press up. So from on your belly, yeah, how would you move into dog? So it might be going back through child, it might be, yeah, good. So I want you to sort of find that for yourself. So come into dog pose and a few breaths in dog. And again in dog pose, you could be playing around with, if you're bending one knee at a time, exaggerating movement so that you're lengthening out through the non-bent leg, the non-bent knee side of your body. And when you bend your knee, you really let that side of your body shorten. That's nice. Yes, and I can see some of you doing sort of one-legged dog poses, which again are a nice thing to do to sort of, lengthen through one side of your body and then the other. Good. And from dog pose, fold down again into child pose. We're going to have a couple of breaths in child pose and then do this little mini sequence one more time. So I'm hoping that, yeah, a couple of breaths. I'm hoping that then it will sort of sink in. And if you do find yourself in, in a week or two or a month's time, feeling really tight in your lower back, you might think, oh, I'll just come and do a bit of wiggling of my pelvis. So when you're ready, come back onto hands and knees one last time. Come to some tail wagging movements. Again, you could come to swinging your lower legs from side to side. Good. You could also do a few cat movements here, just to see how it feels. We've done all these sort of tail wagging, wiggling pelvis movements. How does it feel to come back to cat? If you have a sense of how cat felt when we first did it, does it feel any freer? And then it would probably be nice when you're coming into child pose to round your back to the ceiling and stay rounded as you rock back into child. So then we lengthen out the lower back a bit more. And then once you're in child, you can see, what's it like to this notion of letting your pelvis wiggle a little bit from side to side. It might not just be the pelvis, you might feel a bit the whole of yourself. So what's it like to just find a bit of a side to side wiggle in child? If you don't like it, you don't have to do it, okay? It's a possibility. And then when you're ready, slithering forwards onto your belly. And on your belly, a bit of wiggling your pelvis from side to side. Rocking your pelvis. And of course, if you like doing the one where you take the soles of your feet to the ceiling and you tilt the soles of your feet, tilt your legs from side to side. So again, that's nice, very nice. Good. Lovely. And then one last time, if you let your legs come onto the floor, you're going to imagine yourself moving into dog pose. And how are you going to move into dog pose and make it as comfortable as possible? And again, I'm not saying there's any magic solutions here. Now from this dog pose, so have a couple of breaths in dog, but from this dog pose, you're going to be walking your hands into your feet. So you're going to be coming into a forward bend. And when we're in our forward bend, we can then have this sense of how do the backs of our legs feel. But we're not going up into standing immediately. We're going to be coming down through a squat. So from this forward bend, when you've had 2 or 3 breaths there, then start to bend your knees forwards over your feet. So you're coming down to your squat. Don't worry if your heels come up, because we're actually going to roll forwards onto our knees. We're going to come back onto hands and knees. And this time you're going to step 1 foot forwards and we're going to come into lunge. So if we step 1 foot forwards, we might then want to tuck our back toes under and walk our back leg away from us. And then we can have a few breaths in lunge. Just, yes, might be big exhalations at this point, giving our pelvis down towards the ground. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave us. Just feeling planted down through your front foot. So we're just thinking a little bit about this opening through the front of the body, because when we come into standing, we'll be exploring that sort of movement a bit more. When you're ready to come out of lunge, you can untuck your back toe, keep your chest close to your thigh. You can then rock your pelvis back a bit. So we're doing this sort of easing out of lunge, where we look back behind us, back behind ourselves. Good. And then just swap your feet over. So bring on hands and knees, bring your other foot forwards into lunge. Not always the most elegant movement. Again, tuck your toes under in your back foot, walk your back foot away. Have a few breaths inside two of lunge. So again, this feeling that as we exhale, we can give the weight of our pelvis down. We can start to feel that feeling of opening, lengthening, stretching through the front of the back leg thigh. Good. Yes. Now, after this second lunge, you might want to ease back. What I was going to suggest is we come up into standing by stepping our back foot forwards into a forward bend. What you might want to do first of all is just ease back out of your lunge for a moment, and by untucking your back toe and rocking back. And then, yes. So if this, yeah, I don't think this would be okay, but if you prefer to go into standing through dog pose and a forward bend, you can. Otherwise, what I was thinking about is we're going to sink into our front foot, step our back foot forwards, as we would do in sun salute, end up in a forward bend here. Have a couple of breaths. So if it's better for you to rest your elbows on your thighs, do so. Let your head go. And then we'll roll up into standing. That's it. Just let ourselves arrive in standing. So yeah, just take a moment in standing. We're going to move and then we're going to settle in standing again. So I just think maybe take a moment to look at your feet. And then close. You don't have to close your eyes. You could close your eyes in standing. Just trying to feel yourself in standing. And it could be that you do a little bit of swaying from side to side if you like. So eyes open or closed. So maybe just giving your arms away. Then I think we'll do our loose, our sort of easy swinging twist. I'll obviously open your eyes at this point, swinging your arms from side to side, and then we'll settle in standing for a couple of breaths longer. So as you're doing this one, you can just see how it feels in your shoulders, in your upper back. Let your feet come along with the movement, so feel the whole of yourself in movement. That's very nice. Good. So a couple more times. And then you can carry on as long as you like, but what I'm suggesting we're going to do now is to settle back in standing. So again, I just always start with that looking down at my feet, checking they're a little distance apart, they're parallel. And then I'd like you to bring one hand onto your belly and one hand onto your chest. And then just let yourself settle in standing. You could close your eyes if you like, or have your eyes open. When we close our eyes, just sometimes, as I think you all know, it's just easier to maybe feel yourself. And you're just having this sense of yourself in standing, feeling your footprints on the ground. With your hands on the front of your body, you might be able to feel the breath, your body responding to your breathing. Now we're going to do a few of these movements where we think about opening through the front of the body. So what I'm suggesting to start with, you don't have to go very far, is that maybe one hand, so these ones where we're starting to look up, One hand is either on our breastbone or our belly. We can play around with both. And we bring one arm up. And we just let ourselves look up. We can swap our arms. But what we're trying to feel that is as we look up, our chest or our pelvis is moving forwards. So don't feel that you're pushing this. If your lower back doesn't feel happy, you can always bend your knees a bit more. That might help drop your tailbone. Okay. And eventually, if this is all feeling quite easy, you could try taking both arms up. Now, some people, if your neck isn't so happy, I know some people like to support the back of their head with one hand, so that's another option. And then, yeah, maybe just one more. And then from here, we'll go into a forward bend and a squat. So maybe one more time, just opening through the front of our body. And then move all the way down into a forward bend. Of course, you can rest your elbows on your thighs. Let your arms go, let your head go. And if it would be nice for your lower back, you can then carry on down into a squat, bending your knees forwards over your feet. So that's it. Good. And so whether you're in your squat or your forward bend, have a couple of breaths here. And then we'll make our way back up into standing. So if you're in a squat, start to send your heels down and you'll send your sit bones towards the ceiling. And then as you exhale, sink into your heels, roll up into standing or walk your hands up the fronts of your legs. Good. And then have a little shake out. So we're then going to, and I'm wondering if I should show you this. We're going to move into a balance. It's going to be a familiar one. It's going to be, we're going to be reaching up through one arm, catching our foot, going on through this balance and then reaching forwards, this stalk dancer balance. So I think you all know this well enough that we can just go through it as a sort of little mini sequence in a balance. But obviously if you start to be wobbly, just sort of stop moving and stay where you are. So the first thing, let's see, maybe the first thing is you're going to choose which foot you'd like to stand on. So a little bit of swaying, perhaps just, which leg and foot feels a bit steadier. Choose your steadier side. And if you shut your eyes, now open your eyes and reach up. So whichever foot you're going to stand on, reach up with that arm. So you're reaching up with the arm and you're shifting your weight onto the leg and foot you're going to stand on. So the other leg and foot starts to feel light. You can let your heel come up and then your toes. And then catch the top of your foot or catch your trouser leg. And at this point, let your knee drop and then let your hand come onto your breastbone. And just see if you can settle in this balance for a breath or two. And if you're having a bit of a wobbly day, you could stay here. If you want to go on, you're then going to reach your foot back behind you and you're going to reach your arm forwards. It's fine if your pelvis sort of turns a bit. That's it. So just sort of see where you can go to. And it's also fine if you have a little wobble and you come out and you want to just try again. So you can come back to that place where you've caught your foot, your hand is on your breastbone. And what's it like if you reach forwards and back? Could you have a breath or two there? So it's this sort of lovely, expansive movement. Sometimes we, as do come down, we might expand beyond our what was I going to say? Our point of comfort out of it, but that's fine. Good, very nice. Yeah, have a little shake out, and then we'll do the other side. Yeah, let's shake out, and then we start by taking the other arm up. So it's this process of we take our arm up, we take our awareness into the side of the body we're going to be standing on, shifting our weight into that leg. So this side of the body lengthens. We're peeling our foot off the floor. We're catching the top of our foot. We might feel long and tall here for a couple of breaths. And then the hand can come onto our breastbone and just see if we can settle here. And then from here, you're thinking about this sort of forwards and backwards movement. You're reaching your foot back away from your bottom and you're reaching your other arm forwards and you're letting your pelvis turn a bit. If you like, you don't have to keep your pelvis facing forwards. And just where can you go to? And again, of course, if you fall out, just come back to this sort of midpoint where you've caught your foot, your hands on your breastbone. And you can try that sort of forwards and backwards journey again. Good. This is where we sort of benefit from the lengthening out we did in our squat. So if you feel that you want to do that once more, you can do. Very nice. And then, yes, when you've finished, you're going to come down again into a forward bend and down on into a squat, if you like. So just look at your feet, feet a little distance apart, feet parallel. You could bring your elbows onto your thighs, let your head go, and then release your arms and your head down into your forward bend. Your knees can be as bent as you like, and if you want to go on into squat, obviously your knees bend a lot more. Down on into your squat. Good. And then, of course, like we did with the last squat, you start to reverse that movement, so start to send your heels down and your sit bones up, back into your forward bend, and then rolling up into standing or walking your hands up the fronts of your legs. And when we're back in standing, we'll take our feet a bit wider apart. So you could take your feet as wide as the narrow edge of the mat. We're going to think in standing a bit more about some of these side lengthening movements. So we can do this one here, where we're taking one arm up, and then I'm quite keen on this one where we let the bottom arm swing. Yeah, so we take one arm up, we shift our weight into the raised arm side like we did in the balance, and then the bottom arm can swing, then it's sort of freer. And I often find this side lengthening movement quite challenging through the sides of my body, but when I let my bottom arm swing, it seems to make it a bit easier. So maybe once more on each side. Good. Very nice. Marie was saying this was one of your dance moves, Marie. So like that. And then when you're ready, you're going to go into a forward bend with your feet this distance apart. So I tend to bend my knees more when I do this. And I do tend to then come to rest my elbows on my thighs for a couple of breaths with my knees a bit bent. And then carry on going onto a forward bend, still keeping the knees bent. You don't have to have your knees bent, but it tends to help me feel anchored into my heels. So see how that forward bend feels. Letting your head go, letting your arms go, just feeling very rooted down into your heels. Have another breath or two there, and then coming back up when you're ready, sinking down into your heels. And then you might just want to give your legs a little shake out, because we're going to take the legs a little bit wider apart now. You don't have to go massively wide. So start off with both feet pointing forwards, so your feet parallel still, but then we're going to turn one foot out a bit. So we have done this little sequence before, so we're turning that foot out a bit. It doesn't have to turn all the way out, and we're going to bend that knee. So the most important thing here is your knee and your foot are sort of going in the same direction, doing the same thing. And it's good to be on your mat at this point, yeah, not off your mat. Float your arms up to shoulder height. So we're in this warrior position, warrior two position, where we can look along the middle finger of our front arm. The front arm's the bent leg arm. And feel quite strong and stable below the waist and floaty through the arms. Good. And then from here, we're going to come into another side lengthening movement. So you're going to start to lean over, bring your back arm down for a moment, lean over your bent leg, and your elbow comes to rest on that thigh. And then we reach the other arm up and over. So we're feeling very long through the top side of our body. That's it. That's nice. Good. Good. And have a couple of breaths there. Beautiful. Really nice. So you're going to come back up by sinking into your feet, bringing that top arm down, straightening the bent knee, and then turning that foot forwards. And we're going to do the same thing going the other way. So turn the other foot out, bend that knee. So again, just have your knee and your foot going in the same direction. That's the most important thing. So your back leg straight, your front knees bent. We float our arms up to shoulder height. We try and let the shoulders drop. I've got my palms facing the floor. You can turn and look along your middle finger. And just have a couple of breaths here. Again, this feeling of being strong and steady below the waist, floaty through the arms and the shoulders. And then we start to lean over the bent leg thigh. So our elbow comes to rest on that thigh. And then the other arm can reach up and over. So it's that top side of our body is lengthening out. And we'll have 2 or 3 cycles of breath here. Just trying to, again, feel steady from the waist down. Good. Breath come in, let the breath leave you. And maybe on the next exhalation, you can sink down into your footprints, come back up. Turn the foot that was turned out forwards. So both feet are forwards now. We're going to a forward bend with our legs wide like this. So release your arms, sink into your heels and see how it feels to go forwards here. Yes, you can bend a bit if you like. You've got different options here for your arms. You can just let the arms hang. It can be quite nice to bring the hands onto the ankles or to even hold your elbows. So there might be something else you'd like to do all together. And have a couple of breaths there. Now from here, you're going to be, I was going to say stay in your wide forward bend. It's fine if you come out because I was going to get you to then stay in that wide forward bend, walk your feet in towards each other. So still in your forward bend, walk your feet in until they're hip width apart, until they're a little distance apart. So you're in a normal forward bend. And then from that normal forward bend, you can go down through a squat. One last time. And from this squat, we will sit down so we can use our fingertips on the floor behind us. We will sit down into Cobbler Pose. And that's it. I think lean back onto the hands. So we're just going to do a little bit in sitting and a bit of pinwheel now. So just first of all, I think have a couple of breaths in Cobbler Pose, leaning back onto your hands. We'll spend a bit longer in Cobbler Pose in between our sides of pinwheel. So what we'll do from here is we'll let one knee rock over on top of the other. So we come into side sitting and then we slide our top leg back into pinwheel. And we can do a little bit of circling here. So I'll probably say this every time we do pinwheel, but if I am feeling creaky around my lower back, my pelvis, then pinwheel seems to really help with all of that. So we're going to circle a bit in pinwheel. We're going to come into our pinwheel forward bend, and then we're going to do a bit of moving in pinwheel from side to side, and then forward bending again. So when you've done a little bit of circling, you can turn to face your knee that's going out to the side and just fold the weight of your body over that leg. And see how it feels to settle in pinwheel for a few breaths. In your pinwheel forward bend. So it might be that your hands are on the floor, it might be your elbows are on the floor. Some of you might find your forehead can touch the floor. And it's just letting yourself settle there, letting your shoulders soften as much as possible. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. And then you're going to walk your hands in a little bit and you're going to do a bit of exploration in this side of pinwheel. So there's two things I like you to do. One is walking over towards your back leg, which takes us into a sort of side bending movement. So this side of our body lengthens, the other side shortens. So that's one thing we can do. But then if we start to walk back the other way and walk our hands beyond that knee we folded over, this starts to take us into more of a sort of twisty type movement in our upper back. So you're going to walk both ways a few times and notice what happens. As you walk towards your back leg, you might have to come more upright because it is a bit more challenging. So notice, I think, as you go from side to side, how you feel this in your body, where you feel it in your body. And yeah, what are the limits? Where do you find, at what point do you find you can't really go any further? And what happens if you stay at that point and have a couple of breaths? And so, like with everything, remember that we need to, if we move so quickly that we're not registering, our body doesn't register where we are. So it might be that we need to just sort of stay, have a couple of breaths. How does it feel? Where do we feel the restriction? So I was going to suggest that we went from each side 3 times. And then we'll come back into our pinwheel forward bend. So again, we sort of go beyond that leg we folded over. How does that feel? And it might be you go lower, you come higher up. And then, yes, just come back and let yourself settle again in the forward bend, just resting the weight of your body down over that leg. Good. And I think we might have a couple of buzzing breaths here just to help us settle and quieten. So in your pinwheel forward bend, let your breath come in. Let another cycle of breath come in. We'll do one more buzzing breath here in our forward bend. And you can have a quiet breath or two and then walking your hands in towards you. And you're going to lean back on your arms and you're going to take your legs long and wide. So you don't need to go as wide as you possibly can. Think about, for some of us, it's more comfortable to have the legs not so wide. And we're going to have a couple of breaths here. So you could do a little bit of rolling your legs. That's one thing. And it might be that you feel you can walk your hands in a little bit. So I know some of you are rather keen on this place, some of you are less keen. So do keep leaning back on your hands if it's not so enjoyable. Another thing you can do is stretch into your heels and spread your toes. And so you feel the muscles in the fronts of your legs engage. It maybe helps you sit upright for a moment, but then you've got to let your legs relax. You can't stay there up. Let your legs relax and wobble. And then maybe try that again. Try stretching into your heels, spreading your toes, feeling the muscles tensing, and then letting them go, letting the legs wobble. Some of you might be quite happy bringing your hands forward. So these are just all options. Yeah, it could still be hands back. So one last time, stretch into the heels, spread your toes, and then let the legs go and wobble. And then again, just give yourself maybe 2 more cycles of breath here. So either leaning back if that's better for you, or if you're someone who's rather happy here, you could be leaning forwards onto your hands. Wherever you are, you might want to check in with what's going on in your legs, that actually we want, ideally, these muscles to be relaxed now. So if you sort of give your thighs a little bit of a slap. So particularly if you're folding forwards, what's going on here? Okay, if you're feeling a bit miserable. I should put you out of your misery. We'll be coming out of here. If you're very happy with your legs wide and want to have another couple of breaths there, you can do. Otherwise, lean back on your hands, and you're going to bring your feet back into Cobbler Pose, and see if you can do that without using your hands, just bringing your feet in, and see how Cobbler Pose feels. And in this Cobbler Pose, we'll do some movements. So we'll do a little bit of rocking, which could be with your hands on the floor beside you, or it could be holding your feet or your ankles. And so we can do this one where where we rock our weight onto one sit bone and then the other. Side to side rocking. And then you can also do a bit of circling here. So this would be more where your legs are moving less and your body is making a bit of a circle. So you feel that you're circling around your sit bones. Good, you're sort of circling your weight around and go one way and then the other way. So clockwise, anti-clockwise. And then we can also do our sort of side lengthening movements, which again will fit in with some of our sort of focus today. So these ones where we're leaning to one side, but we're leaving our legs behind. So it's more, we find this length down through one side of the body and then the other. Very nice. Okay. And of course, we've got to move on to our side two of pinwheel. So maybe just before we do that, you could lengthen your legs out for a moment, either just in front of you, or if you're very keen to take them wide again, take them wide again. Give your legs a little roll and then come back into Cobbler Pose, and we'll come on into pinwheel on the other side. So let your knee come on top of your knee, that's it. Slide that top leg back. Start by a little bit of circling here. So circling one way. Good. Notice how it feels. That's it. So just like we did on the other side, we're going to start by doing our forward bend. We're then going to come to those side to side movements and come back into the forward bend for some buzzing breath. So turn so you're facing along this thigh that's going out to the side, fold down over that leg. And just let yourself settle there. Let your shoulders soften. See how it feels to be inside two of pinwheel. And then enjoy a couple of quiet breaths where you're being as sort of passive as possible, that sort of giving the weight of your body to the ground, letting your shoulders undo. And then when you're ready, you can walk in a little bit. So remember, when we're going to do these side to side movements. So when you walk over towards your back leg, you might need to come quite up. It's not an easy movement, this one, when walking towards the back leg. And then walking towards the leg we folded over and beyond that leg. And you might feel that as you're going beyond that leg that you want to go lower. So these are all options. You could be up, you could go lower. And then do this 3 times and just give yourself time. So you want to give yourself enough time that the movement registers in your body. If you're racing from side to side, then there's not time to feel what's going on. I think when you're coming towards your back leg, it's harder to be low. Yeah. And just really noticing what you're feeling around your pelvis. There's lots of interesting movements going on, interesting sensations. And what you're feeling through your rib cage and the sides of your body, and even into your upper back. And of course, it goes without saying that you're not pushing yourself into some sort of uncomfortable contortion. It's really about a bit of exploration. So I've already forgotten how many times I've done this. When you've gone from side to side 3 times, then you can fold back into your pinwheel forward bend. And we'll settle there and we'll have a couple of cycles of buzzing breath. and use that long exhalation with the buzz to help us settle even more. So let a breath come in. And one more time. And then a quiet breath or so, and then walking your hands in towards you. Leaning back, lengthening your legs out. If you're someone who's keen on your wide sitting, you could revisit that. But what I thought we would do is just revisit one last time our little tail wagging sequence without the forward bend. What we'll do from lying on our belly is flip straight over onto our backs. So I thought just one last time we'd revisit hands and knees, wagging our tail, and then child pose, wagging our tail, and then onto our belly. So just coming back to these movements, seeing how they feel. Might be from after pinwheel, that our pelvis might feel a little bit more mobile. So a little bit of tail wagging on hands and knees. And then folding into child pose. You don't have to, you could just be in a quiet child pose, or you could see what it's like to shift your pelvis a little bit from side to side. It might be that you just want to be quiet in child. Feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And from child pose, then slithering onto your belly. And on your belly, coming to those, first that sort of wiggling your pelvis from side to side. So do a bit of wiggling your pelvis on your belly and then rest for a moment, and then you can do the one where you bend your knees if you like. So if you like that, so you can then bend your knees, let your feet tilt from side to side. Good. And then when you're lying on your belly, if you rest your legs back down, then just think about how you can move from your belly onto your back easily. So it could be as simple as sort of just rolling over and let yourself arrive onto your backs. Obviously putting on any warm things that you want to put on in the meantime. And I was going to say, you know, when I was practicing yesterday and doing this, I just got onto my back and I just wanted to lie quietly. If you feel drawn to doing anything else, if you feel drawn to folding your knees into your chest, you can do. Yes, rolling the head is a nice option, Francis, very nice. The other thing, if you wanted to, you don't have to, if you wanted to revisit it, was the movement we did at the beginning of class, where you're lying with your knees bent and your feet standing on the floor, and you're sort of sweeping your pelvis from side to side. So it might be interesting if you want to revisit that one after all these sort of, yes, very nice, Francis, of all these sort of movements we've done of the pelvis from side to side. That one might make more sense. But it's also nice just to settle down quietly when you're ready. So yes, and any last movements, sort of working your way through them, and then finding a sort of quiet, comfortable, warm place to settle yourself down. And maybe bringing your hands to rest on the front of your body, so that might help you connect with your breathing a little bit more. And the contact of our hands on the front of our body is calming and settling. So we have this opportunity now just for a couple of minutes, just to let ourselves be. We've got no agenda here. There's this opportunity to rest quietly, to be aware of our body. These sensations, even when we're not moving, sensations arise in the body and fall away. We can be aware of this sort of constant flow of our breath. In breath followed by out breath. And we can also be aware of the support of the ground beneath us, so the points of our body in contact with the ground, and settling our weight through these points of contact. Check in with your jaw and your lips and your tongue, and just make sure your face is soft, your jaw is soft. The space between your eyebrows is soft and relaxed. Let your shoulders rest back onto the ground. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. So thank you very much, everyone. Pleased you were able to join us, Sarah. So you weren't sure.